Thank you. It's a delight to be here today. When I give a speech or appear over on the Hill, I never get any applause like this, so I'm delighted to be here. It's nice to be among friends and allies and certainly a medical group like this. Before I get started with my remarks, I would like to introduce a couple people with me today. First, my wife Carol is here. Also, some of you have met or visited with on the phone in my congressional office that deals with all legislation, but in particular medical legislation. And he's the legislative director, and that's Norm Singleton, sitting in the back here. And also with me today is somebody who has helped me with some of my extracurricular activities in politics and a few other things like the Liberty Committee. He's here, and that's David James. You know, being up here and looking out here and looking how beautiful the city and all looks, it reminds me of a few years back when I was on the Gold Commission, and yet I was scheduled to fly to Houston for a political function with President Reagan at the time. And we were all supposed to meet him at Andrews Air Force Base, but I was at Treasury on this commission, and I wanted to attend this, so my staff talked to the White House, and they said, well, if he's going to be there and he can't leave, he can just fly out on the helicopter with the president. So because of that, I did have a personal visit with the president, and we flew out and took off from the White House and flew out by the monuments. And I can remember what he said. He looked down and he thought, isn't this amazing? He says, look at this beautiful city. Isn't it amazing how many horrible things come out of it? So, and I also remember because money and gold was on my mind at that time, because that was at the end of the consequence of the guns and butter philosophy of the 1960s. And we know what kind of inflation and bad economy we had in the 70s. Maybe not unlike what we're facing today. But I did bring up the subject of gold because we had heard that he was favorable toward it, and I was just coming from the Gold Commission, so we talked a little bit about that. And he revealed to me at that time that he did not think any nation throughout history that got off the gold standard remained great. So he, deep down in his heart, was a firm believer in sound money. Reversing those trends, of course, is sort of like if you try to reverse the trends in the monetary system in the Federal Reserve, it's sort of like trying to reverse the trends of the U.S. government involved in medical care, and that is a challenge. And of course, this is the reason why I favor so much this group, because you understand the Constitution and you understand what free market medicine is all about, and you don't sell out. That's what's so great. And this is, of course, the reason why very early on I became a lifetime member of AAPS and strongly support it. And I think Dr. Jane Orient certainly deserves a lot of credit for the enthusiasm that you have today. I'm glad to see Stan Evans here because he's been a favorite of mine, and he has really understood what free market medicine is all about and has supported us. And I understand he spoke to you today, so I'm sure he gave you a good message in sound economic policy and sound free market medicine. And tragically, we're not moving in that direction. But I have a tentative solution on what we might do to get the attention of the politician. You know, we've heard recently about the problem we face with eminent domain. Matter of fact, I was just in Kentucky at Western University, Kentucky, and met 6 or 7 economists at Western Kentucky University that were very free market oriented and very much aware of the Fee Foundation and other organizations. And the topic there was eminent domain. And I talked about eminent domain, but also property rights in general. But I think that what they're doing in New Hampshire is a fantastic idea. I was up there not too long ago, And they have just subtly filed suit in order to take suitors' land under eminent domain and teach them a lesson. So maybe what we ought to do with all politicians who support government medicine is make sure that they can get medical care in no other ways other than Medicaid. And that might get their attention as well. But freedom of choice is something they don't understand. I am saddened at times about physicians in Congress. You know, we have more now than ever. But if you look carefully, they're not exactly the greatest champion of free market medicine, and tend to capitulate and go along with the AMA and think that the only thing that we can do now is it's in place, so why don't we just work hard and make sure the physicians get a higher fee? Well, if that's our solution to our problems today, you can expect that free market medicine is not going to be revived. In a way, the remnant of the physicians in this country really are in this organization. And the remnant is pretty important. Those remaining believers have to set the example. And that's what so many of you do, not only in spirit, but as well as in practicality by not participating. I was amazed in how it worked in the Soviet Union, and Solzhenitsyn talked about this, that there was still free market care in the Soviet system. And that was for the politicians. Instead of the politicians getting pushed to the bottom of the ladder and making accept government medicine, they always provided that one doctor, protected this doctor here or there, so the politician could walk in and have more personalized private care. But even in a system as wicked as the Soviet system, there was a great remnant, and I'm always amazed that you meet people coming out of Russia and the Soviet system after the collapse, well educated, knew the English language, knew the classics, and sometimes, the underground educational system in the Soviet Union was even a bit superior to some of the public education in this country. So this is why our efforts in AAPS is so crucial, that we carry the banner for free markets and understand the necessity of having the doctor-patient relationship. If that's not kept alive, we're in big trouble, and medicine is in big trouble, because about the only thing they know what to do over on the Hill is spend more money. Every time it gets worse, they spend more money, and then when they come up with shortages, realizing spending more money doesn't do much more than raise prices, what do? They talk about rationing, and this is certainly the age that we're moving in, and something that we all should be very, very concerned about. Congress is rather typical on the way they operate. It's careless disregard for your money, for your lives, and your property. Just as eminent domain shows no respect for private property, I think the members of Congress basically show no respect either, because it is known over in the House and in Congress in general that if we provide a tax benefit to you, they always mark it down. And unfortunately, the party in power today even talks like this. Well, that's going to be a cost to government, and how are we going to pay for it? To allow you to keep more of your own money, they still call it a cost to government. And it is that attitude that makes them rather careless and casual about how they spend your money. A month or so ago, there was a scheduled takeoff of the shuttle down in Florida. And many members of Congress, since there had been the tragic accident with the shuttle, this was great that it was going off again. So there were members that wanted to attend. And the Science Committee, especially since they dealt with the legislation and the funding of the shuttle. So they had the Congress suspend the votes. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, and all of a sudden I heard the announcement there'd be no votes that Tuesday because there were the Science Committee wanted to go and watch the takeoff. And they scheduled up a plane. They called the Air Force. The Air Force gets them at 7:30, and the committee, those who wanted to go, filled half the plane. But then there were other members who decided they'd like to go as well. And they said, can we go along? And there's a sort of a class structure in the Congress. And they say, no, you can't come with us. This is for the committee. So they went and got their own plane. And not that many wanted to go, and they only filled that plane half up. And then when there was an expression from some senators, they wanted to go as well. You certainly couldn't mix senators with congressmen, House members. So they went and got their own plane. And 3 or 4 senators went, and they got another 737, and they were prepared to go. They all got in the plane, they flew down, and of course you know what happened is when they got there, the shuttle didn't go. But that was no big deal. I mean, you just fly down there, 3 jets, come back, and cause a little bit of disruption in the process. That might have been the best part. They disrupted Congress for at least 6 hours. Maybe, that reminds me of a proposal I made once, is that I had one that said that in the 70s, I said, the members of Congress pay should be reduced at the rate of inflation. Maybe they would learn what causes inflation. And then I decided, no, I didn't get any co-sponsors, so so I decided I was going to do one where every member would be paid $1 million a year. And the promise is they had to stay at home and never go to Washington. Probably be a pretty good investment. But on this flight to Texas, they decided some ornery, unreasonable journalist went and added up the gallons of jet fuel they used. And back then, fuel was a lot cheaper. It was probably $1 or $2 cheaper than it is today. But back then, a month or so ago, the fuel price of those 3 jets, just the fuel, came out to be $73,000. And that didn't, and they end up not even seeing what they went for. But Congress reacts. They don't have, as a whole, they don't have a strong philosophy other than going where they're pushed and where the demands are. The country has a prevailing philosophy that influences Congress, and the prevailing philosophy of this country is, what's the government going to do for me? How's the government going to take care of me? Whether it's medical care or providing education or providing jobs or whatever. And not that isn't bad enough, that the government becomes the nanny state, but now we've taken on the world. We're to police the world and continue the Wilsonian dream of making the world safe for democracy, and money doesn't count. It makes no difference. And the reason is that we have a unique benefit in this country in that we get to print the gold. The dollar used to be backed by gold, and there was a limit on how many dollars were supposed to be printed. But of course, that was abused and thrown out. And now there's an unlimited ability for our government to print money and create credit out of thin air, which means there's no limit placed on the politician, whether it's for medical care or for welfare benefits or for policing the world. So we create the money, we run up the spending, run up the debts, and no matter what happens, fortunately, there's an anti-tax policy in Washington. That's okay. But what they don't realize is spending is a tax. As soon as we spend, it becomes a tax. Because if we don't raise taxes and we borrow, we in the future have to tax people to pay off the notes. But if we do neither, if we just allow the Fed to buy the Treasury bills, which they do in a wholesale manner, they create this out of thin air, and the dilution of the value of the dollar is a tax. So everything is a tax. And we in Congress, unfortunately, act as if there are no restraints. And that's why if there's political pressure on the Congress to do anything, or our president to do anything, no sweat, we'll spend it. I mean, so just recently we had this catastrophic hurricane hit New Orleans. So we did 10 without Congress in session. We do another 50 with Congress in session. There were 11 of us who voted against the 50. And now, you may not clap after I tell you the consequence of those votes. And now there's even a bigger burden of rebuilding New Orleans. So the president proposed $200 billion. And I think many of us saw the editorial in the Wall Street Journal that said that if you took 500,000 families and gave them $400,000 each, you would finally use up $200 billion. But what do? We give it to FEMA, the organization everybody despises. Even my constituents are always complaining about FEMA. So, and they take 87% of the money comes to Washington, stays in Washington bureaucrats, and very little of it really helps the people. So that's what we do in Washington. We create it. And unfortunately and tragically, what I hear behind the scenes on what we should do with FEMA in order to further embarrass the Democrats that were running New Orleans and the state of Louisiana is to show that they're a bunch of inept politicians down there. So what we need is a stronger FEMA. They need ability to impose martial law. And this is the kind of thing that they're talking about now. Not only give them more money, but give them more power and martial law to enforce federal solutions to our problem. And the reason that there's a little bit of concern about that for me, that is if I think politically, which I do now and then, is you know that I have argued our case for the Constitution, for limited government, and if at best, local government, volunteer help, and all the things that America has stood for so many years, and against this whole notion that we can just give these hundreds of billions of dollars to government agencies to solve our problem. Well, that was all fine and good, and I had some ramifications from voting for that. I mean, in our papers, they said, how could he be so calloused as not to want to help? What would happen if a hurricane ever came to Galveston, which I represent? Right now, if you look at the map of the coast, I have over 200 miles of that coast, and the center that they target, the new hurricane, is right in the center of our district. And whether it gets hit in the center or the side, or whether the wind's 170 or 130, we don't know that. But it will be a political challenge. Not only that, that is enough to stir the activities in the Republican Party. They were not particularly happy that I was there, pointing out a few errors that they have made fiscally. And now with this opportunity of not being a strong supporter of the FEMA solution to floods, this raises a lot of questions politically, as well as Democrats are now very interested in the seat. And I have a new district. I have probably close to 300,000 new people that I've only represented since January. So I would say in all the years that I've been in politics, I have almost miraculously been able to state my position and be as honest and upfront. And when they disagree, they say, well, at least he tells the truth. He's a fiscal conservative. He wants government small. He does what he says, and I get some pluses for that. But I would say this may well be the biggest challenge that I've ever had in politics. So we'll see how that turns out. But in the meantime, I'm sure it's going to continue this problem because the hurricane, of course, is going to hit here in the next day or so, and I will be going back to Texas and seeing what we can do. A lot of people have asked me, and I was asked already tonight in crowds like this, those who are very sympathetic with what I do, and they say, well, you know, I like what you're doing, and it's great you're there, but how in the world can you stand it? I mean, how do you put up with it? And the one part of it is how do you survive politically, but how do you survive emotionally in a place like that? And the answer is very simple. I have very low expectations. You know, the nickname they've given me, and I see already my time is running out, but I could tell a few more stories. I just want to make one mention to the name that they give me, and many of you have heard it. It is a Dr. No. The applause has to be qualified because I really don't want to be Dr. No. My staff likes it, and you like it because you know I'm saying no to some awfully bad things. But you know, in many ways, I like to think of our philosophy as being very positive. I'd like to be Dr. Yes for Liberty, and that would solve so much of our problems. But to be up here, it is Dr. No. It is to say no and try to stay and stand firm on the principles. So far, so good. I've been able to, because somebody did a study not too long ago, and he did this as a research study, and he looked at all the votes between year 2000 and 2004, and found out that there were 126 times that I voted all by myself. And this means that in other people, people in groups like this will come and say, you know, you're really the best congressman. We really like you. But just remember, the competition isn't all that great, you know. But I'm very delighted to be here today, and I just want to finish up, and I don't know whether we're going to try to get questions or not, mainly because of the time, but I wanted to finish with a quote from Samuel Adams, who's one of my favorite founders, because he talks about the benefit of the small numbers. And Leonard Reed was always talked about this. You know, it isn't a 51% game. It's leadership, and it's the views. So though our numbers in AAPS are small in number, it's the fact that we represent the right position is the most important. And that view is eventually going to prevail if this country prevails as a free nation. So we want to always legalize freedom of choice. I have various pieces of legislation which I can't get into right now because of time, but they're basically in the direction of allowing free markets to develop, like the savings accounts that just allow people to get out of the system, legalizing competition. And Samuel Adams said, it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And that is the key to it. The ideas of liberty. All political action, as far as I'm concerned, should be designed for liberty, because the solutions come out of liberty and freedom. The market produces. So if we do not prevail, it is the failure of our ability to present the views on liberty. But this is where I am an optimist. I think back about the Fee Foundation and Leonard Reed, because there was a time when that was the only organization that was providing any good information for me. But now there are dozens of organizations. There's the internet, and some occasionally good talk show hosts around the country. So we do have the communication ability now that we didn't have before. What we can't do is let our guard down. And even if medicine gets worse before it gets better, we have to prevail, and we have to stick with defending the principles of the free market in general and how it provides the best medical care in any place in the world, because we've had the best medical care in the world and we've had the freest system. We have to defend that cause. There is no reason why we can't prevail. And I thank you very much.
Time for
Sure, I do.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. I know I speak for all when I say thank God for the courage and conviction of Dr. Ron Paul.
Thank you.
We have a short amount of time to take maybe 4 or 5 questions.
Ron?
Okay, excuse me.
Fair tax versus flat tax.
Fair tax versus flat tax. I'm for the low tax or no tax. I'm for cutting spending above all the reform in taxation, because I think it's the spending that is the problem. My position is that I will do anything to get rid of the IRS, which means if the sales tax comes up, I will probably vote for it, but I am not a co-sponsor. I don't think it provides the solution. I think only dealing with the role of government provides a solution. We have to decide that we do not want the welfare warfare state. And if you have a high sales tax or a high flat tax, and you still could finance the welfare and the warfare, it doesn't gain much. I'm not a strong supporter of the sales tax, but I would support it over the monster that we have today.
Congressman, I spent yesterday with the Club for Growth, and many congressmen were talking about Rita and Katrina being an opportunity to redirect government shut down spending, cut programs, particularly the Medicare drug benefit, for example, put it off, maybe kill it, so that we can shrink the size of government at the time when you guys are going to need all the help.
Right.
Where would you?
No, this is a great idea, and that is he suggests that we have offsets. If we're going to send emergency money down, we are entrenched in a system where people are so dependent, and our hearts have to go out with to so many people that the type of poverty we saw in New Orleans, we created it, so it's not like we just walk away. So the very least, we ought to have offsets. And the Club for Growth has been a leader in this. The conservative members of Congress yesterday proposed cutbacks on some highway money and different things, but there's one shortcoming. They're not willing to cut that foreign monstrosity overseas of foreign interventionism, and we have to be willing to cut some of that. But that would be the interim solution. Cut spending and then help out on these dire need projects.
We all know that foreign markets work. However, today we have hospitals routinely charging 300, 400, 500% above what they charge to Medicare and third-party payers for people who have health savings accounts and are self-insured. That's not a free market anymore. They are able to gouge health savings accounts patients and customers that way.
His point is that the way the system we have now today, we have some people contracting with the government and getting it for a lot cheaper than the free market comes in, or what's left of the free market, and then they charge a lot of money. Well, really, it's not a free market. There's just a lot of money out there churning after these services. And I would say you're right. It's not. And people take advantages, physicians and hospitals and labs. Everybody charges the maximum. And in the old days, before all this, which I remember, we always charged the minimum. There was a lot more charity. People never got turned away from emergency rooms, and everybody charged the minimum. But this just reflects the attitude and the psychology of what is going on. But I don't think you can say that's a failure of the marketplace when you have government now paying 60-some% of all the bills. It's sort of like the complexity of why some people get charged more for drugs at the same time. When you can sell drugs to the government, it's less. It's much more complex. But I say that's a complication of the monstrosity that we have now created by government. Single-party payers tend to frighten me a little bit. I like lots of competition, but of course, the program we have now is very bureaucratic and very expensive, but that is should be expected. It's sort of like the FEMA approach to floods. Most of the money goes to FEMA, and very little goes to the flood. And this money, medical money, goes to corporations, drug companies, HMOs, hospitals, and very little goes to really helping the patient and filling out paperwork.
Let's take one final question, Dr. Eck.
Yes, I've always been intrigued by your discussions with Alan Greenspan over currency issues. As off the wall for a medical group, but what's your view on the prospects of gold and the dollar?
The dollar is going to go down, and gold is going to go up. And exactly when, that's somebody else's decision to make. But I can guarantee you that the U.S. Congress is going to be in deficit financing, and it's going to get worse for a long time to come. They basically will not raise taxes. That is good, but they will tax us through the inflation tax. They are going to print and create money. The dollar has to go down in value. The big question is, will the legs be knocked out of the dollar precipitously, or will there be a gradual decline? Most currencies end up with a precipitous fall. There's a panic out of the dollar, and we've set the stage for that. We have the biggest financial bubble in the history of mankind today, and it's all based on a dollar bubble. And the foreign central banks hold a lot more Treasury notes and Fannie Mae than our own Federal Reserve does. So when they cool to our dollars and buying our debt, I think you're going to see the dollar really sinking. And if history is any test, and it's been pretty accurate for 6,000 years, people will trust gold more than they'll trust the politicians, and that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now,